In 2014, Edinburgh opened their first modern tram line, running about 14 kilometres from the airport to the city centre. Of course, like many cities, Edinburgh used to have a much larger tram network that basically spanned the whole city. But, also like many cities, this was unfortunately torn up in the 1950s to make space for cars and to be replaced with buses. So now the city is having to do the hard work to start building its network back up again. When that first modern tram line was being planned, the idea was for this new network to be a lot bigger. The line was supposed to go further than just the city centre, instead running all the way to Newhaven, where it would then loop back around via Granton to form a circle line. It was also supposed to go further west than the airport, extending all the way to Newbridge, and there was even supposed to be a southern branch to Musselburgh. Now, as I'm sure those of you who are even vaguely familiar with the city's tram network know, most of this did not end up getting built, although there has been some progress with an extension of the line from the city centre to Newhaven opening a bit over 2 years ago. So that still leaves Edinburgh with just a single tram line, but despite concerns during the line's initial planning that it wouldn't get enough usage to justify its cost, the line has actually proven to be pretty popular. In fact, since that extension to Newhaven opened, the line's patronage has basically doubled from around 5 million a year to over 10 million. This success has not gone unnoticed, and the City of Edinburgh has already started looking ahead to what the next expansion of the system could be, and in this video, so shall we. Looking back at this map of the existing tram line, we can see it forms a pretty good east-west link across the city. So, naturally, it would make sense that the next line added to the system would be a north-south one, and that's basically what's been planned. This new north-south line will be formed of 3 parts: a northern section to Granton, a southern section to either Dalkeith or Musselburgh, and a potential central section through Edinburgh's Old Town. The northern section of the line will branch off the existing tram line's track just after Haymarket Station to follow an old abandoned rail alignment northwards for a potential stop around Roseburn Terrace, which will be close to the site of the old Murrayfield railway station that used to exist along that railway track, and whose station platforms are even still visible on the trail that now runs through it. Now, before I go any further, I will say that while Edinburgh Council has released maps indicating where stations will likely be, they haven't confirmed all the names just yet. So I just want to caution that none of the stop names I'll be saying are final. Regardless, after that the line will continue along that old railway alignment for another stop at Ravelston Dykes, and then Queensferry Road, which would provide access to the major shopping precinct at Craigleith Retail Park. The next stop will then be in Telford, which will provide access to the nearby Western General Hospital, followed by a stop just off Ferry Road in Crewe Toll, and then one in Pilton. The areas around this Pilton stop are ranked as some of the more deprived areas in Edinburgh, and it's hoped giving them access to high quality public transport will help improve things. After that though, the line will then run to a few stops in Granton, a waterfront area that's historically been industrial, but is, at the moment, undergoing a bit of a regeneration, with lots of new housing being built, and it's hoped giving the tram access will only further encourage this. As such, the tram will run along or next to Waterfront Avenue for a stop at the old Granton railway station, before continuing along Waterfront Avenue for a stop at Saltire Square, and finally Granton Square, which will be the northern terminus of the line, at least for the time being. As we can see though, when this extension is built, it will start to look like those original tram plans. So it's not inconceivable that there may even be an attempt to finish that northern loop at some point in the future. Now, there are a few more things worth mentioning about this northern section. Firstly, what I've just shown is the current preferred alignment of the City of Edinburgh. It's not the final alignment, and there are some other alternate alignments under consideration. One of these alignments would see the line running along Telford Road for a short segment, which would allow the Telford stop to be a bit closer to the health precinct, but I don't personally think that's worth the detour off the old rail alignment. It would make the line slower, and running along the road would make construction more complex and disruptive, so I agree with the council's preferred alignment along the old rail corridor here. Another alternative alignment would see the line running along Queensferry Road and Orchard Brae rather than using the rail corridor. There are a few people in favour of this option because that corridor is now a popular linear park with various pedestrian paths and cycle trails. Unsurprisingly, the people using these paths and trails don't want to lose them, and as such would prefer this alternate alignment, which doesn't affect them. However, I'd be a bit worried about the street running segments along this alignment. Neither Queensferry Road nor Orchard Brae are particularly wide, so I could see there being a temptation with this alignment to run the trams through mixed traffic, which I think should be avoided. Wherever possible, I would like to see the trams running in their own dedicated lanes, because honestly, when they don't, they're not offering many benefits over a standard bus. So, as a result, I once again find myself agreeing with the council's preferred route along the old rail corridor. As for the concerns about the linear park, I think they're understandable, but there are examples across the world of tram systems running through parks, such as Wimbo Park along Sydney's light rail, or running next to walking paths, like here along Barcelona's T4, so I think, if done right, the tramway and linear park can quite easily coexist. Trams are usually fairly quiet and can be quite aesthetic, so tramways tend to be much more pleasant places to walk next to than, say, a busy roadway. Getting back to the proposed extension though, and Edinburgh Council has also been looking at extending the line southwards. Again, there are a few potential alignments they are considering, but let's focus on their preferred route to start. This route would start by branching off the existing tram line near Edinburgh Waverley Station, for a stop at the station that will provide a bit more of a convenient connection to it than the existing stop at St Andrew's Square. The line then continues southward through the Old Town for a stop near Nicholson Square, followed by one at Preston Street, before crossing over the site of the disused Newington railway station for another stop. Obviously, being disused, this railway station no longer sees any passenger service, but the tracks are still being used by freight trains. And if the passenger service were to be brought back in some form, a topic I would like to cover in a future video, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that, this stop could form an important interchange. After that though, the line turns off the street for a stop at Cameron Toll Shopping Centre, followed by one at Craigmillar Castle Park, and then one at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, another major health precinct. Around this health precinct is a growing life sciences industry, and the following stop, BioQuarter, will improve access to it and hopefully encourage it to grow even further. Where the line heads next is a bit less clear. There are a few options being considered by the council, but they're not super fleshed out. One option would see the line head to Queen Margaret University and Musselburgh train station, either along Green Dykes and Niddry main roads, or a more direct route cutting through parkland. Another would see the line heading to Shawfair Station, and then down to some sort of multimodal transport hub somewhere near Dalkeith, with another option also heading to that hub, but taking a more direct route along Old Dalkeith Road. Again, the plans for these final sections are still pretty vague, though I'm inclined to like the first option to go to Musselburgh, as it would add more connections to various train stations, and I'm basically always procreating as many interchange opportunities as possible. Plus, I also imagine the link to Queen Margaret University would also prove quite useful. That said, the link to Dalkeith could also be useful, but the plans for that option currently just suggest a multimodal interchange pretty far from the centre of town. Aside from all of this, the final section of track that this extension could see built would be in the city centre. While the council's preferred alignment would see both the north and south extensions connected along the existing track used by the current tram, they are also considering adding a new set of track that could run down Lothian Road in an arc towards Clerk Street, where trams would then continue down the southern extension. Another option would be to have the trams run down Morrison Street after Haymarket Station, past Edinburgh University, and then joining the southern extension around Nicholson Square. While the council's preferred alignment would be cheaper and simpler, because you're just reusing existing infrastructure, these two alternative alignments would see more of Edinburgh's Old Town made easily accessible by tram. Plus, by not sharing track with the current tram line, both the current and new tram lines would have greater potential capacity. That said, the first option I mentioned, that would run via Lothian Road, would likely connect up with the street running option for the northern alignment, which I've already said I'm not a big fan of. However, the second alignment, via Morrison Street, would connect up with the northern section's option that makes use of the abandoned rail corridor, which I think would work better. That said, both of these alternative routes through central Edinburgh would miss out on the new interchange at Edinburgh Waverley, which I think would be a shame. Regardless of which route is chosen though, I think a priority should be to not have the trams running through mixed traffic. These new potential central Edinburgh routes and a lot of the southern extensions route look like they'll be running along the street, which isn't necessarily a problem as long as they're given their own dedicated lanes. However, we've already seen the existing tram line having to share lanes with cars along parts of its street running segments, and I feel like it's one of the main things holding the current system back. When trams share space with cars, they're not really offering a lot more than a basic bus route, and I'm not sure it's worth spending all the money to build a tram line when that's the case. While they may still offer slightly better passenger comfort, They'll be less reliable and less flexible. At least a bus can divert if there's an issue along its route. Trams, on the other hand, will just be stuck sitting there. When trams run in dedicated lanes, they can skip past traffic jams, allowing them to be more competitive with driving speed-wise, and as a result they will become more appealing. Now, of course, when you dedicate road space to trams, there's a chance you'll be taking it away from cars, which can cause concern from drivers. That said, as we've seen in other light rail projects around the world, turning car lanes into dedicated tram ones can often improve traffic. When Sydney was building their City and South East light rail project, they closed George Street to cars. George Street was one of the main road arteries through the centre of the city, so a lot of people were worried this would cause traffic chaos. But this didn't happen. And now the pedestrianised George Street with a tram running down it has become a much more pleasant part of the city. As a result, I think if Edinburgh did the same with its trams, not only would it be a massive improvement for the trams themselves, but it would likely not be as big of a deal for drivers as they might think it could be. Ultimately, I think these tram extension plans could make a great addition to Edinburgh's public transport network. It would connect up a number of major residential, retail, education and commercial precincts, while generally improving how people travel around the city, and would even potentially add a few new connections to the city's heavy rail stations. Currently, the plans are scheduled to head into the community consultation phase sometime this year, so they are probably still a while away and there is still a lot of room for change. Plus, while I think they are very solid for the most part, I do think if the system is going to reach its fullest potential, giving it its own dedicated lanes needs to be made a priority. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you really enjoyed it, you could consider supporting me on Ko-fi, I do always appreciate it. With that said, I'm Kyle, aka City Moose, and as always, thanks for watching.